We're going to be working our way through Daniel chapter 11, verses 1 through 21, Lord willing. This is not apocalyptic writing. This version of the prophetic word that we're about to dive into is not apocalyptic. There's no symbology. There's no illustrations. So what we're seeing here for us is going to be historically accurate. There's a lot of history in these upcoming verses. A lot of history. And this is what is absolutely amazing. It's history to us, but to Daniel, he's seeing 300, let me say that again, 300 years into the future. Now, try and wrap your finite mind around that. You think about what this vision that has been given to Daniel and in all the pieces that are moving, and it plays out exactly as our sovereign Lord has decreed. It's brilliant. It's amazing. And yet, history can be difficult at times. So we're going to work our way through this history, Daniel's future. Now, last week we did cover chapter 10. And it starts out with a specific date, April 23rd, 536 BC. The prophet Daniel was hanging out by the Tigris River when a mysterious figure shows up. Now this visitor, who, like I said, I truly lean is the pre-incarnate Jesus. There you go. That's all you need to know, right? Now, he tells Daniel that he's about to receive another vision from the Lord, building on what he had already received while in Babylon. Now, the sight of this holy figure scares Daniel. And why is that? Any time man is in the presence of holiness, even an angel who's just been in the presence of the Lord, what does it do? It shows just how sinful we are. The righteousness of God illuminating our sins. So of course, this drops Daniel down to his face. And this pre-incarnate Christ, what does he do? He reassures Daniel. He's like, Daniel, it's okay. You have nothing to fear. God has found favor with you. Now, Daniel got a vision that would show what lies ahead for the Jews in exile. At this point, we know that Cyrus has taken over. He's overthrown Babylon, and this was also prophesied that when this occurred, the exiles would be sent back home after their 70 years. We also know that Daniel has been reading Jeremiah, who has promised a new covenant. So here Daniel is thinking, okay, maybe this is when the new covenant is also going to be introduced, when the exiles return back home. But he's already made clear that that's going to be later on. However, just because the exiles have returned back home and they're starting to reestablish Judah, starting to rebuild the temple, this isn't going to be easy. There's going to be a lot of difficulties ahead of you. There's going to be trying times. But we saw something else in last week's chapter, that it's not just going to be because of the physical realm that there's going to be these trying times, but also because of this raging battle that's taking place in the spiritual realm between good and evil. There's a little section in chapter 10 where it speaks of the prince in the kingdom of Persia. But this isn't referring to Cyrus. This isn't referring to a man. It's referring to a demon who is at work in the Persian Empire. And why the Persian Empire? Because it's the Persian Empire that God brought to crush Babylon. It's the Persian Empire that is freeing God's children. So this demon is trying to thwart the plan of God. Again, it's not just in the physical realm that Daniel is being shown, but also the spiritual realm where there is a battle taking place. So Jerusalem and the temple, they are going to be rebuilt. But Judah is going to be caught in the middle of a power struggle between two feuding empires. And this is where we're going tonight. So brace yourself. A lot of excitement. But these two feuding empires, the Seleucids, and they're located to the north. It's the regions of Babylon and Syria. And then you have the Ptolemies. And the Ptolemies are going to be located to the south. Think of Egypt. And you have Judah right in the middle of them. And this is what has already been prophesied. Listen, you're going to go back home, but there's going to be war just going on around you over and over and over. This is what is going to be taking place. All right. Now that you're prepared, here we go. Let's look at verse 1. And as for me, in the first year of Darius the Mede, I stood up to confirm and strengthen him. So once again, we are given a date. The first year of Darius the Mede is going to be around 539 BC. The year in which the decree was made for the Jews to return to Judah has been officially issued. This angel is explaining this vision to Daniel. The very one has had a role in this taking place as well. So you see, even in the spiritual realm, the angels are at work in fulfilling God's plan. Even though we can't see it happening, it is taking place, and it's still happening today, O church. I cannot emphasize that these prophetic words in which we're about to read are going to take place 300 years into the future. Again, the sovereignty of God is absolutely amazing. Nothing can stop his plan. Not man, not the demons, not Satan himself. What God decrees happens. Now you may want to throw up, well, what about free will? Well, we can just chunk it out the window because it's not there. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Probably not tonight, though. All right, now let's look at verse 2 here. And now I will show you the truth. Behold, 3 more kings shall arise in Persia, and a 4th shall be far richer than all of them. And when he has become strong through his riches, he shall stir up all against the kingdom of Greece. Okay, bear with me here, okay? Because we've got some kings and we've got some dates coming up. So we know that King Cyrus dies in 530 BC, the one who crushes Babylon and frees God's people. After his death, we have 3 more kings that follow. Cambyses is from 530 to 522 BC. And then we have Smerdis, who's 522 BC. And then we have Darius the First, not to be confused with Darius the Mede. They have a lot of the same names back then. But Darius the First, and he rules from 522 to 486 BC. And then we have the 4th king. Okay, this is the one there's going to be a change here, and this is Xerxes. Now, Xerxes rules from 486 to 464. Xerxes is beyond wealthy. Xerxes also has an issue with the Greeks. He doesn't care for them. He continues to fight with the Greeks, but he's never successful. And these battles between the Persians and the Greeks, well, they continue until one man comes onto the scene. We've heard this name before, this being Alexander the Great. And it's Alexander the Great who crushes the Persians in 2 different battles, one that takes place in 334 BC and the other in 331 BC. And it's then that he defeats them once and for all. Now look at verse 3. Then a mighty king shall arise who shall rule with great dominion and do as he wills. And as soon as he has arisen, his kingdom shall be broken. This, again, is speaking of Alexander the Great right here. And divided toward the four winds of heaven. But not to his posterity, not according to the authority with which he ruled, for his kingdom shall be plucked up and go to others besides these. So Alexander the Great, this master of war, starts in 334 BC when he invades Asia Minor. But it's wild because Alexander the Great and this mastermind of his, when it comes to war, well, he dies unexpectedly in around 323 BC at a very young age of 32. That's young. He was a powerful ruler, known to be extremely headstrong. Now, his empire reached from Macedonia to Egypt and into the Indus River. After his death, his empire could not sustain because he didn't have a successor. So what ends up happening? It's divided into four kingdoms. Now, two of these kingdoms become the Seleucid kingdom, which was located northeast of Judah. This is the ones that we're talking about. And then you have the Ptolemies, which was to the south of Judah. And you have Judah right in the middle of these two empires that are going to be continuing to go at each other. And we're going to jump way ahead here. Don't hold on to this because we're going to back up. But this continues until Rome finally conquers the region. And they do this around 61 BC. And that's also when they enslave Israel. Okay? And you can just wipe that away now. I just thought I'd throw that little tidbit in there. Now look at verse 5. Then the king of the south shall be strong, but one of his princes shall be stronger than he, and shall rule, and his authority shall be a great authority. Hard pause right here for a second, because some of you may be thinking, what is this history lesson? And I get it, I understand that, but I cannot emphasize enough what God decrees happens. That's the authority that he has. Now, this verse is primarily going to be focusing on those two empires, the Ptolemies and the Seleucids. The king of the south here is in reference to Ptolemy the First. They have names, but I'm not going to get into all that. We're just going to say Ptolemy the First, and he's going to rule from around 323 to 285 BC. Now, this kind of gets a little interesting here if you want a little twist. One of the Ptolemy's general was a man by the name of Seleucus the First, who ruled over Babylon. But there was an issue because there was another general who forced Seleucus out. So Seleucus flees from Babylon and he heads to Egypt. And it's while he's in Egypt that he serves under Ptolemy the First, becoming his prince. Now the general who got rid of Seleucus, the one that ran him out of Babylon, well, he gets defeated in Gaza. So once Seleucus hears about this, he leaves Egypt, heads back to Babylon, and would soon claim the title of king there. So this is where we're getting the names, the Ptolemies and the Seleucids, okay? They were once partners, but watch what happens here. Once Seleucus leaves Egypt, heads back to Babylon, becomes king, his kingdom begins to grow. Becomes very powerful, eventually surpassing Ptolemy's kingdom. Now, what do you think happens? Do you think Ptolemy is happy for Seleucid? Like, hey, that's great! Glad your kingdom just surpassed mine? No, he doesn't like this. Again, we see the pride of man playing out. Since Ptolemy now sees Seleucus as an issue, battles begin between them. And they continue to battle throughout their dynasties, really up until about 250 BC. That's how long these wars continue. And it was then that they end up coming together. Okay, around 250 BC, they come together and they said, listen, we can't keep going on like this. So they come up with a peace treaty, along with unarranged marriage. Here was the plan. Berenice, this being Ptolemy II's daughter, this is the plan, is to marry Antiochus II, the grandson of Seleucus I. I know what you're thinking. That's a lot of names. I'm trying to do my best to make this as clear as mud. So just hang with me. But here's the thing. This isn't going to work. And you may be asking yourself, why isn't this going to work? This seems like a brilliant plan. You want a peace treaty, an arranged marriage? How can this go wrong? But this is a train wreck. And this is the reason why it's a train wreck. Antiochus II, one who's arranged to be married here, he already has a wife. Yeah, who was a queen. And her name was Laodice. Now, do you think Antiochus asked Laodice, hey, are you cool if I marry Berenice? Is that okay with you? Well, how do you think that's going to go? As soon as she finds out that Antiochus has gone out and married another woman, guess what she does? Ladies, just because it's in Scripture doesn't mean it's prescriptive, okay? This is a descriptive understanding, but she ends up poisoning him. And her wrath doesn't stop there. Laodice proceeds to have the new wife, Berenice, killed along with her young child. Nothing like the wrath of a woman. So she kills Berenice and the young child to make sure of what? That Seleucus II would secure the throne. Okay. Now, this, again, is mind-blowing because look at the next part of Daniel's vision. And remember, 300 years into the future is where all this is playing out, okay? Look at verse 6. After some years they shall make an alliance, and the daughter of the king of the south shall come to the king of the north to make an agreement. But she shall not retain the strength of her arm, and he and his arm shall not endure, but she shall be given up, and her attendants, he who fathered her, and he who supported her in those times. Okay, just try and keep these names in order like I am. Berenice is Ptolemy II's daughter. This was part of the arranged marriage. Berenice is killed along with her young child, and the one who is going to support her, that being her father, Ptolemy II, dies soon after. So there's just a lot of death taking place here. Now, it's in these upcoming verses that this vision predicts the war that's going to take place between Ptolemy II and Seleucid II. That being the son of Laodice and Antiochus II. Names. I get it. But the point is, these are real people playing out in real history through a vision given to Daniel 300 years before it even takes place. Look at verse 7. And from a branch from her, this is Berenice, roots, one shall arise in his place, this being Ptolemy III. He shall come against the army and enter the fortress of the king of the north, this being Antioch in Syria, and he shall deal with them and shall prevail. He shall also carry off to Egypt their gods with their metal images and their precious vessels of silver and gold. And for some years he shall refrain from attacking the king of the north. Then the latter shall come into the realm of the king of the south, but shall return to his own land. It's a lot going on there. This begins out of revenge. It begins out of revenge because of Berenice, who was killed. Because she was killed, the Ptolemies invade the Seleucids. And man, they loot a large amount of gold from them. And Ptolemy III even managed to orchestrate the death of Laodice. So now she's wiped out. She's gone. However, as history unfolded, Ptolemy III faced an insurrection back home and was compelled to return back to Egypt. Now, following him were the armies of Seleucus II, which attempted unsuccessfully to defeat the Ptolemies. Now, at that time, the Ptolemies were not in a position to launch an attack against the Seleucids, just as the prophetic word predicted. Now look at verse 10. His sons shall wage war and assemble a multitude of great forces, which shall keep coming and overflow and pass through, and again shall carry the war as far as his fortress. Seleucus II, he dies around 226 BC and was succeeded by his son, Seleucus III. Okay? Now, Seleucus III has a brother by the name of Antiochus III. You may have heard his name before in the prior chapters. Now, these two brothers are going to continue to battle the Ptolemies. Unfortunately, Seleucus III is killed in 223 BC, after which his brother Antiochus III takes the throne. Now, Antiochus III is this well-known military leader, and he becomes known as Antiochus the Great. What Antiochus III does is he takes this shattered state and makes it a powerful nation. And he begins his campaign in Phoenicia and Palestine. And these wars that he's waging right now carries to his fortress in Raphia, which is where it says, shall carry the war as far as his fortress. Okay, again, everything is playing out. And again, I'm sorry, there's a lot going on here. Wonderful history lesson, but hard to keep up with. I get it. Now look at verse 11. Then the king of the south, moved with rage, shall come out and fight against the king of the north. And he shall raise a great multitude, but it shall be given into his hand. And when the multitude is taken away, his heart shall be exalted, and he shall cast down tens of thousands, but he shall not prevail. A lot of ground to cover. Now, after the death of Ptolemy III in 221, his son, guess what his name is? Ptolemy IV. Good guess. He ends up waging war against Antiochus III in 217. He defeats Antiochus in Raphia, the very place in which his fortress was located. Ptolemy IV achieved unexpected success by capturing a large amount of the Seleucids' territory. He was the ultimate overachiever because they weren't expecting this from him. Now, after returning to Egypt, this is odd, but he and his wife, of course that being the queen, die under mysterious circumstances. And not sure what killed them, but something took place there. So their son, guess what his name is? Ptolemy V, good, ascended to the throne, but at a very, very, very young age. He's probably like 6 or 7. Could you imagine that responsibility, 6 or 7? Here's the throne, it's yours. He's worried about a nap, not ruling an empire. Now, what does Antiochus III do? If you're seeing your enemy and their king is a 5 or 6-year-old, this is an opportunity, right? You would think. He sees this as a time for revenge, and he ends up launching an attack on Egypt to reclaim his land. Now look at verse 13. For the king of the north shall again raise a multitude greater than the first, and after some years he shall come on with a great army and abundant supplies. Head into 14. In those times many shall rise against the king of the south, the Seleucids against the Ptolemies, and the violent among your own people shall lift themselves up in order to fulfill the vision, but they shall fail. If you will, there's in this verse where it speaks of the violence among your own. This is speaking of the Jewish people. There's going to be a brief civil war between the Jewish people in Jerusalem around 199 BC. Now you may be asking, well, what in the world are they arguing about? I mean, of course they've been back in Judah for a period of time now. The temple's rebuilt. The kingdom is flourishing again. However, you got these battles going on around them. But what are they fighting over? I'm going to tell you what they're fighting over. The Ptolemies and the Seleucids. Yes, they're even arguing in-house over who should be ruling over them. And you may be thinking, well, that's kind of odd. But here's the thing. Many of the Jewish people were tired of paying the high Egyptian taxes from the region known as the Ptolemies. They're the ones that are forcing them to pay taxes to them. And they're sitting there thinking, well, if we can get the Seleucids to take over, we won't have to pay these ridiculous taxes anymore. So many of the Jews end up trying to form a revolt against the Ptolemies, the Egyptian general who was located in their region. And it doesn't go over well, not at all. And what does this end up doing? If you have a revolt and they attack your general, the Ptolemaic nation isn't going to be happy with that. And they end up taking their anger out on the leaders of Jerusalem and Judah. Look at verse 15. Then the king of the north, Antiochus III, shall come and throw up siege works and take a well-fortified city, this being Sidon. And the forces of the south shall not stand, or even his best troops, for there shall be no strength to stand. But he who comes against him shall do as he wills, and none shall stand before him. This being Antiochus III. And he shall stand in the glorious land with destruction in his hand. Through all that, you know what's being said there. Antiochus III defeats the Egyptian forces. He's taking over the lands of Phoenicia and Palestine. Now look at verse 17. He shall set his face to come with the strength of his whole kingdom, and he shall bring terms of an agreement and perform them. He shall give him the daughter of women to destroy the kingdom, but it shall not stand or be to his advantage. Okay, so after the Egyptians, that being the Ptolemies, they end up surrendering. And when they surrender to Antiochus III, he forces them to form an alliance with Syria, okay? Antiochus has this plan. And his plan is this. It's very simple. He just wants more power. That's what he's looking for. More power. Antiochus has a daughter by the name of Cleopatra. Not the Cleopatra, okay? Not the Cleopatra, but has a daughter named Cleopatra. We again have another arranged marriage. What Antiochus III wants to do is have his daughter to marry Ptolemy V. And here's his plan. Antiochus is hoping that his daughter's offspring would reign over Egypt, allowing him to do what? Eventually gain more power through his grandchildren. That's his plan. He just wants to take over the world. He'll do it any way that he sees fit. Let's pause here for a second. Okay? Because, again, 300 years, Daniel has laid this out. But look at what man still tries to do. We have the future, right? God has put it out there, but man is still like, I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to try and take over as much as I can. I want this power, and yet God is saying that's not going to happen. But what does man still do? No, I can make this happen. Why? Because I don't believe in you, God. Well, what can you do? I have all these other gods in which I'm worshiping. You're just one. But look at what ends up happening here. Cleopatra, his daughter, doesn't stand with her father, but her husband, Ptolemy V. Now look at verse 18. Afterward, he shall turn his face to the coastlands and shall capture many of them, but a commander shall put an end to his insolence. Antiochus III continues with some success, even without the plan of the offsprings. And this is saying along the coast, so this could be referring to Asia Minor and Greece that he is still conquering. However, it doesn't last. Now, he could read this. He could read this and see that it's just not going to work, right? But instead, he makes his choices, and yet his choices fall right into God's decree. he does exactly as God has commanded. Yet God did not force it upon him, never sent an angel with a gun holding it to his head saying, this is what you're going to do. No, this is what Antiochus decided to do, which is exactly what God decreed. Work that out? Can't. But there it is. At this point in time, we have another empire starting to rise up. Some of you have probably heard of this empire by the name of Rome. Rome is becoming powerful, and they end up defeating Antiochus III. Rome, in their power, does this. They make the Seleucids become a vassal state to Rome. Now, what does that mean? It just means Rome is so powerful that they're making Antioch's Seleucids pay large amounts of money to Rome now. Okay, we ain't got much longer, okay, I promise. I hope you guys have been writing this down because the review next week is going to be terrible. Okay, so here we continue. Indeed, now this is speaking of the Roman commander, Lucius Cornelius, shall turn his insolence back upon him. Then he, Antiochus III, shall turn his face back toward the fortresses of his own land, that being Syria, but he shall stumble and fall and shall not be found. Antiochus is killed in a battle in a desert wilderness in 187 BC while attempting to plunder smaller kingdoms to pay his tribute to Rome. What? I mean, think about that. So God uses Rome, this empire, raises them up, even says, Antiochus III, this isn't going to work out for you. I'm going to use Rome, make you start paying Rome, so you're going to start plundering these smaller villages, and you're going to die. That's the way it plays out. Just like he says. All right, so Antiochus' son, this being Seleucid IV, takes over. And it's pretty amazing because the way in which God orchestrates everything is brilliant, and he's actually better than Shakespeare. Seleucid, Antioch's son, sends his own treasurer to rob the temple in Jerusalem. Okay? Because he still has to pay Rome. So he's going to send his own treasurer into Jerusalem to rob God's temple. That's a great plan, says no one. Now look at verse 20. Then shall arise in his place one who shall send an exactor of tribute for the glory of the kingdom, but within a few days he shall be broken, neither in anger nor in battle. What is this speaking of here? Oh, this is good. This is, again, Shakespeare, whatever. So it appears that Seleucid IV's treasurer, who he sent to go rob the temple, was actually in cahoots with Seleucid's brother, that being Antiochus IV. Now, there's a chance, just saying, wink, wink, nod, nod, allegedly, that Antiochus IV had Seleucus IV poisoned, with the treasurer playing a sneaky part in it. So the very treasurer that he sent to rob from the temple was probably involved in killing the very man who sent him to rob the temple. Anyway, Seleucus IV doesn't rule for long and didn't leave much of an impact, especially compared to his notorious brother Antiochus IV, which we're going to get more into. Antiochus IV comes up with a nickname for himself. He calls himself the manifestation of God. We're getting into one of the Antichrist, if you will. Now, it's in these upcoming verses, which we're only going to cover one more, and then we're going to call it a stop. But it's in these upcoming verses that Antiochus IV, his horrific reign begins. And at this moment, he's ruling over Syria, Palestine, and Judah. Look at verse 21. In his place, Seleucid IV shall arise, a contemptible person to whom royal majesty has not been given. This being Antiochus IV. He shall come in without warning and obtain the kingdom by flatteries. Seleucid IV has a son who should have taken over the throne once he died. Once Seleucid IV died, his son should take it over. However, his son just happens to be in prison in Rome. So what does Antiochus do? He calls Karen. No. So what does Antiochus do? He sees this opportunity, right? The one who should take over the throne's in prison. So the manifestation of God says, I'm just going to take it myself. Even though it wasn't officially given to him. And you may be asking, well, how is he able to do this? Money. He uses his wealth to pay off the higher-ups, to bribe them to allow him the throne. Funny how things have not changed. Hence, obtain the kingdom by flatteries. I'm going to say this over and over again. What our sovereign Lord decrees takes place. This is one of those chapters. I know it's long and there's a lot of names and we're covering a lot of ground, a lot of kings, a lot of things are happening. But man alive, just as he describes, here it is. That's the Lord in which we serve. Do you understand where our faith lies? In the Almighty Creator who cannot be thwarted, who cannot be challenged. That is who we serve. And I hope you find comfort in this. But because even looking through the Old Testament and seeing these visions, these prophecies taking place, does it not give you comfort and security in knowing the future promises in which He has made? For our Lord cannot break His promise. If your faith is in Christ, there is no doubt that when you stand before the Holy of Holies, you will be seen righteous, clothed in the righteousness of Christ, because that is what He has promised. What other evidence do you need other than looking at Daniel chapter 11? Absolutely amazing. You're probably not as blown away by this as I am, because you had to listen to it, sorry. But yeah, we'll end right there. So, questions, comments?